Hi, I'm Rosalie Corrame. I am a transformational somatic trauma healing coach. And this is one in a series of videos called Understanding Developmental Trauma and Healing. My passion and vision is that everyone who has a history of developmental trauma will have free and abundant access to information and resources that really help, so that you feel seen and understood, so that you understand and appreciate yourself better, realizing where you've come from and where you are and how much you have done, and so that you have a variety of options for ways that you can support and accelerate your own healing journey, regardless of whether or not you are also working with a trauma healing facilitator or group. I'm glad that you're here. I hope you find this information helpful and useful, and thank you for being you. I want to talk about freeze and about life force energy, which is sort of kind of the opposite of freeze. So, as I've said before, many of us with significant developmental trauma, we're walking around with this configuration where there's this pushy energy, this fight, flee, gotta do stuff to survive energy that's constantly pushing up. And then there's this freeze that comes over top of it and just like shuts it all down. So we're walking around with this really intense stuff going on, but it's like muted. So we may not even quite know that it's there, but it's still kind of messing with our lives. So what do we do about this, right? How do I not be frozen? How do I allow this force that's there? How do I allow a force like that, but a force that feels good? How about, like, instead of, what do I need to do? How about, whoa, I'm alive. Being alive is great. What am I going to do with being alive, right? That's what we want to find. And we're in this place where we're so stuck that it's hard to really feel good just in general. So what do we do with that? One thing that we can do with that is sort of relax around it, is kind of let go of any panic or urgency or desperation around, man, I don't like how I feel. How I feel is awful. I want to not feel like I feel. Because, true enough, I don't want to feel like that. But what happens is that desperation, that unhappiness about how I feel actually adds one more layer of suffering on top of this. There's plenty of suffering there, right? In this push and suppress, there's plenty of suffering there already. I don't want to add any more on top of it. So I want to bring curiosity and compassion, and just as much as I can, just a sort of accepting and letting go around the reality that I experienced some stuff that left my particular body and nervous system in this kind of state, and this is where I've been living. That's interesting. Wow. Okay. Kind of like that. As we can find our way to a respectful, begrudging acceptance and curiosity about the whole thing, then there begins to be some space and the possibility of making some shifts and movements. But when we're in reaction to even how I'm feeling, then it's a lot more difficult, right? It's a lot more difficult to get some movement when I'm like this than when I'm like this. Yeah. So then another piece, taking that one step further, right? I want to sort of soften around the whole thing. And then one thing we can do is like get curious and interested in the freeze, as opposed to just really trying to get rid of it. Like, if I feel this tendency in me to just get really still, just like make everything stop. If I go there, and I gotta check that out, like, what's it like in this place? Or I just shut everything down. And sometimes, because the freeze can be quite powerful in a good way, not just a bad way, sometimes this freeze place can actually be kind of pleasant. Like I succeeded in making all that pushiness go somewhere else. And this might be sweet. And if I'm always rebelling against it, trying to get out of it, I might never experience like what that sweetness is. So that's one place you might want to try going, is like, what happens if I step inside the door of the freeze and I look around and I check it out? And what happens if I'm curious about this pushiness that's underneath the freeze without protesting it? What if I just sort of kind of try to feel, what's that quality of push? And what's that quality of freeze? What's that quality of push? And what's that quality of freeze? That's what that feels like. I have a recording on my SoundCloud page that you can find that's about freeze, and it's stillness and movement, and freeze and gentle stillness, and fearful movement and relaxed movement. That does some of this exploration, this with curiosity about kind of what's the freeze feel like, what's the push feel like, what's it all feel like. So I guess that's really also the next thing I want to invite you to try. So go see if you can find that recording, and I'll attempt to put notes wherever this is posted that will help you get there. And I'm just going to give you the basic idea, because it's something you can also just simply try inside yourself. And the idea is, notice the impulse to be really still, to be frozen really still, because there's danger. And feel that. And what does it feel like to be really still? Because I just feel really good. And what's it like to have the impulse to be really still because there's danger? And what's it like to have the impulse to be really still because it feels really good? And the recording, and you can do this on your own, goes back and forth, practicing, giving your body the taste of going back and forth between this bracing, frozen place and this soft, this feels good place. And this is a practice I've been doing myself for some months now, off and on, and I really believe it's making a difference. And that reminds me of something else that I want to point out, which is just in general and in every single specific, when we have developmental trauma, when we have this hidden stuff I'm hiding from myself because it was too unpleasant, every single one of us who has that has no idea how much of it there is. And however much I think I have left to deal with, right? However much I think I still have hidden in me, there's a lot more than that. That's just the way it works. It's too much to be aware of all of it, so we're not aware of all of it. And it's just something that's important to understand and then remind ourselves of again and again. So that's got a lot of implications. One is, it's another reason to be curious, forgiving, and gentle with ourselves. Because even though we sort of think we know what we're dealing with and maybe we ought to be over it by now, we don't really know because it's bigger than that. And it's a reminder to even when I feel better than I felt, maybe even in forever, right? Even when I sort of find new thresholds of how I can be in my life, that it can get better than that. And don't forget to keep doing the kinds of practices that have helped me this far, right? Don't think, okay, I got there, I'm pretty okay, now I can just relax and do my life. No. Number one, there's further to go. There's more to unearth. There's more to work with. And number two, those old habits that we've had since we were so small that are going to kind of lock us up and are going to, wag their finger at us, telling it, don't be too alive, don't be too happy, don't express yourself, right? Those habits, they didn't completely disappear, even though I may have gotten to some threshold where they're not nagging me constantly. And if we stop altogether doing the various kinds of practices that have got us this far, we're going to tend to not only not find those much greater places we can get to, we're going to tend to backslide and feel worse. So I talked a bit about freeze. I didn't talk as much about life force energy as I think I want to. So what do I want to say about life force energy? Those of us with a bunch of trauma, there's a tendency, not in everybody, but certainly in me and in many people I've seen, there's a tendency in my body to equate the strong energy of life force, to equate that with suffering. When I felt strong energies, it was because I had to do something to survive. And my body doesn't even know what a life force energy of celebration feels like. So I invite you to be curious about that. And in your practices, look for it, experiment with dancing, right? Just putting on music and dancing, or just quietly digging for and saying, hey, what can I find in me that feels like celebration, that feels like life itself, that feels like joy? What's in there like that? So that's one thing. Another thing we can do around life force energy is when I'm feeling upset, right, angry or frustrated or confused, but in a way that's charged, right? When I have some charge, there's life force in there. There's some fabulous life force energy inside these intense, pushy emotions. So I invite you, as much as you can, I invite you to sort of get curious about that and sort of see if you can feel the life. See if you can sort of just don't pay attention to the qualities of the unpleasantness of the anger or hurt, and just see if you can feel the life in there, right? And practice ooh, I'm angry. That means I'm alive. Let me feel how I'm alive. Feel the flow of energy in your body that's just neutral life energy, right? Let's see, is there something else I want to say? So, those are my invitations to you. Soften around the freeze. Soften around the intensity underneath the freeze. Get curious about the freeze and maybe go visit it and check it out. What's there? When you feel intense emotions, notice the neutral flow of energy or the positive flow of energy that's underneath, right? It's not all that specific negative cast. There's some stuff under that there's just life. Notice that life and look for. Oh, here's one more. So if you have had experiences where you really did experience just celebration or joy or vitality, right? If you have those in your past, remember them and take moments to just remember and get present with. Feel that in your body again. Oh, I remember that. It was so great, right? And if you have the possibility of doing things in your life right now that will give you those experiences of just celebration, right? The flow of life, go do that. Yeah. Yeah. So So I invite you to be curious about freeze, and I invite you to celebrate life, and I invite you to be just curious and open and see what might be available to shift in you related to the dance of life and the dance of freeze or suppression, and then life and freeze. Just playing with that and being curious, and enjoy your aliveness in whatever flavor it takes today. Thank you.